as a Rasul, made a mistake. Please pay attention. This is so critical to understanding how to critique what we read in books written by men. Now, I'm not critiquing the Quran. The Quran did not say this story that was reported in the books of Tafsir, as we shall see. Right now, I'm only presenting enough evidence to make you think, to make you reflect. Does the official interpretation story that is offered in the books of Tafsir, does that story reflect truly what the Quran said about our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Or did they make up that story for other purposes? Right now, I'm only trying to convince you that that official, traditional story, which by the way exists in every single book of Tafsir, there is a complete 100% consensus on this. Even the translations which took from the books of Tafsir relayed the exact same image, the exact same story. And I'm claiming that this story is bogus, it's wrong, it's unacceptable, it is not true, it is contradicting what the Quran actually says. Inshallah, in this segment, we're proving that it is false. In future segments, we're going to provide the exact solution and the exact translation and commentary on the surah to prove to you that the official story does not hold any water, and the real content of Surah Abasa, Surah 80, is so beautiful and so rich and so wise and confirming so many other things in the Quran, as we shall see, inshallah. So the problem that we see, the biggest problem, is that during the time Muhammad was in Mecca, he was a Rasul. He was just delivering, especially in the early days of his mission, the early years of his mission, supposedly when this story occurred, story with Abdullah ibn Maktoum. So if he was a Rasul and he made that mistake, was that mistake related to the delivery of the message? Of course it was. Because a Rasul is tasked with delivering the message. So it's like a salesperson, right? A salesperson works very hard to find any customer, and yet here's a customer who is coming looking for Muhammad, asking him to receive that message, and Muhammad turns away from him. Does that make sense to you? Is that what the behavior of a Rasul is? And at the same time, he's focused on people who don't want him. We know from the books of Sirah, if you believe in the books of Sirah, that they did not want him from day one. They considered Muhammad and his message a threat. Why would they sit with him? Why would Muhammad give them a time of day? Because they obviously were harassing him, were harming him and his family, were labeling him as crazy, as magician, etc., etc. Why would the Prophet ﷺ keep seeking their approval, as the official erroneous story say? Of course it's wrong. So therefore, this is a mistake that he committed supposedly as a Rasul. Let me repeat, we don't believe this. This is what their stories say. This is what the story in the books of Tafsir say, that Muhammad as a Rasul made that mistake. The question is, isn't the Rasul ma'soom, protected from making mistakes? And if he is not protected from making delivery mistakes, how can we trust the Rasul in anything else he brought us? Very significant question. This is not a joke. This is not an exaggeration. We're putting this in front of you so you can critique and criticize and apply your critical thinking and decide, do you want to believe the Quran or do you want to believe the stories they told us about the Quran? The stories are wrong. Muhammad ﷺ was not as they said. Muhammad ﷺ was much better, and the way he is described in the Quran is much, much better than this. Now, I want you to remember in closing, I did not create this problem. This is not a problem I'm bringing to you because I created it. This is a problem created by the books of Tafsir. They caused this problem by putting such a story as their twist on the Surah 80, Surah Abasa. So I'm only exposing it to you, but we're not stopping. We are providing the solution. In other words, in future segments, inshallah, coming very soon, we're going to identify exactly what this surah is talking about. And we're going to elaborate this surah and interpret it and translate it. And you're going to see how rich and how beautiful this surah is. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the story of the blind man who came to Muhammad supposedly, and Muhammad turned away from him and frowned, and all of this untrue type of story. Now, in case you're asking, some of you have been asking me in private, aren't you concerned that your critique of the books of Tafsir are going to be taken by evangelists and other opponents of Islam, and they use them against Muslims? Well, guess what? They're already doing this. The problem is nobody is stepping forward and offering real answers to these challenges that the evangelists and the opponents of Islam are putting forth. And therefore, they are working in a field without any opposing team. This channel is the opposing team. So we identify the problem. We tell you, you are part of the solution. And here's the solution. Help us defend Islam. Help us defend the Quran. Help us defend the reputation of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, some may claim that, okay, well, Muhammad made a mistake, but Allah immediately corrected the mistake. So Muhammad as a Rasul, made a mistake. Let's admit this. And Allah corrected the mistake. So what's the problem? He revealed the surah to prove to us that mistakes were caught and corrected. Well, there are a couple of problems, at least with this issue. First, a surah with 42 ayah have been revealed as a reaction to a small behavioral mistake by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's what you're saying if you make that claim. Does that make sense to you? 42 ayah, a whole surah, just to address Muhammad frowning and turning away? Does that make sense? Is this what correcting a mistake really entail? Couldn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have corrected that mistake in private or in a discreet manner, such as ayah 22:52 says? We discussed this ayah, by the way, in a prior segment. Now, the bigger problem is, if the whole surah is revealed for that purpose, what does that say about the purpose of the Quran? Is the Quran revealed just as a reaction, knee-jerk reaction to something that just happened to happen? Is this what the purpose of the Quran is? Is this how little you think of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Of course, all of these challenges create evidence that this is definitely not the purpose of this surah. There must be a much bigger, much more important purpose for this surah. Now, to my friends who are going to attack me for sure, and that's fine, keep doing it. I don't have a problem. I have a Teflon back. I don't worry about people who are feeble-minded, who don't understand what we're trying to do on this channel. But please understand that if you're going to insist on defending the story that is present in the books of Tafsir, that means you're also confirming that Muhammad as a Rasul was not ma'soom, was not protected from mistakes, was not shielded from mistakes. And this is a big problem, because then you're going to have to answer a question: how can you trust what he brought you if he was not shielded from making mistakes as a Rasul? How can you claim that what he brought you was perfect? So be careful what you stand and defend. If you want to defend what human beings wrote in some old books, that's your choice. We choose to defend the Quran. We choose to defend the reputation of our beloved Prophet ﷺ. We choose to defend the coherence within the Quran. We choose to defend the concept that everything in the Quran is intentional, it is meant for all time and places, and it is full of meaning and intentions and relevance. Nothing is just for the sake of filling space. Finally, some may ask, are you not afraid that you could be wrong, you could be mistaken, and therefore you may be, unfair in attacking the authors of the books of Tafsir? First of all, I'm not attacking anyone, because we don't really know who wrote these books. We really don't know. Most of the time, these books were written 200 or 300 years after the death of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and even if we have the name of the author, there is no way to validate that same person actually is the one who wrote what we have in our hand today. There is absolutely no evidence for that. That's number one. Number two, I would much rather face these people on the Day of Judgment, having done what I could do to defend my beloved Prophet ﷺ and the Quran, instead of having to face Prophet Muhammad ﷺ on the Day of Judgment.
وما أرسلنا من رسول إلا بلسان قومه